Have you ever wondered what it would be like to bake a cake that perfectly captures the spirit of the holidays? Well, today we're diving into that exact experience with a recipe that's as much a culinary adventure as it is a festive delight. This gingerbread bundt cake with caramel filling boasts layers of rich, complex flavors, warm spices, and gooey caramel wrapped up in one magical dessert. It's a challenge, yes, but the reward, pure holiday perfection. Let's get started and uncover the secrets to this show-stopping cake. I start by grabbing a small bowl and whisking together 3/4 cup of melted butter. It's going to create such a rich, smooth base for the sugars. Oh, and if you're unsure how to melt butter without turning it into an oily mess, don't worry. I have a whole video dedicated to the art of melting butter like a pro. Then I add 1 cup of granulated sugar. It's what gives the cake that classic irresistible sweetness. Next up is 1/2 cup of brown sugar. I love how it adds that caramel-like depth and warmth to the mix. After that, I whisk everything together and set the bowl aside. It's such a satisfying step knowing the flavors are coming together perfectly. In a separate, large bowl, I add wet ingredients. This will be our main bowl where we continue making our batter, so make sure it's big enough to hold all the mixing and batter effortlessly. So it's important everything is well combined. I break into the bowl 3 eggs. They're essential for binding everything together perfectly. A splash of 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract goes in next. It's the little aromatic touch that makes all the difference. Then comes 1/2 cup of molasses. This is where the magic of gingerbread flavor really starts to shine through. Finally, I added 1 cup of sour cream. It keeps the cake wonderfully moist and adds just a hint of tang to balance the sweetness. If you're in a pinch, you can substitute the sour cream with plain Greek yogurt or even buttermilk. Both work beautifully and maintain that lovely tang. I grab my trusty large hand whisk and get to work mixing everything together. That's just my personal preference because it feels like a mini workout before dessert. Of course, you can absolutely use a hand electric mixer or a stand mixer on low speed if that's more your style. No judgment here. The important thing is that everything is well combined. Think of it as a team effort between you and the batter to create something magical. Now I pour the butter mixture into the large bowl with the wet ingredients and give it a gentle mix. I'm careful not to overmix. The batter doesn't need a marathon workout, and honestly, neither do I. Here's a little tip. Mix just until everything looks combined and resist the urge to keep stirring. This bowl is where everything starts to come together, so I like to think of it as the heart of the recipe. It's where the magic begins and where the flavors start their dance party. Now it's time for the dry ingredients. First up, I add 3 cups of all-purpose flour. Not only does this keep the batter smooth and lump-free, but I like to think of it as giving the flour a little breathing room before the magic happens. Then I toss in 1/2 teaspoon of salt. It's the unsung hero of baking, quietly enhancing all the flavors without stealing the spotlight. Next, 2 teaspoons of baking powder join the mix. This little addition ensures the cake rises beautifully, like a cozy gingerbread cloud. Finally, the real stars of the show, the spices. I add in 2 teaspoons of ground cinnamon, 2.5 teaspoons of ground ginger, 1 teaspoon of ground nutmeg, 1/2 teaspoon of ground cloves, and 1/2 teaspoon of ground allspice. These spices are the soul of the cake, making it smell and taste like a holiday dream. I slowly combine the dry mix into the wet ingredients, stirring carefully until everything is smooth and velvety. Here's a tip. Fold the dry ingredients in gently to avoid overmixing. You want the cake to stay light and fluffy, not dense and grumpy. And oh, the aroma at this point? It's like a warm holiday hug. In a bowl, complete with a hint of nostalgia, and maybe a sprinkle of anticipation for that first bite. This is where you know you're onto something magical. I use tools that make this recipe faster and more comfortable for me. But you don't need to feel obligated to use the same ones. For example, if you don't have a hand mixer, a trusty whisk will do the job. Just give your arm a good stretch first. And if you don't have a hand whisk, a fork will do the job too, though it might double as your arm workout for the day. On the flip side, if you want to go a little fancy, using a stand mixer with a paddle attachment can make the process even easier. Baking is all about working with what you have and having fun while you're at it. After all, it's not about perfection. It's about creating something delicious and memorable. hope you're loving the process of making this delicious gingerbread bundt cake with caramel filling as much as I am. If you're enjoying this recipe, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and tap the bell so you'll never miss any of my festive baking adventures. Do you have a favorite bundt cake recipe or a unique twist that makes your holiday gatherings extra special? Maybe there's a family recipe passed down through generations that you treasure. I'd love for you to share it with me in the comments below. Let's swap ideas and keep the holiday baking magic alive. Here on my channel, I love blending food photography and baking, inviting you into my kitchen to celebrate the art and joy of holiday treats. From creating show-stopping bundt cakes to capturing the perfect frosting swirl, I hope you feel inspired to bake something amazing too. Thanks for joining me on this festive adventure. Let's pour that batter and create something unforgettable. Now let's tackle the caramel filling. First, I crack one egg into a small bowl. The egg is going to help the filling set perfectly when baked. Next, I grab 1/2 cup of caramel sauce. It's the star ingredient here, bringing that gooey, sweet goodness we all love. I give it a light whisk, just enough to blend everything smoothly. It's like giving the ingredients a quick pep talk before moving on to the next step. Then I measure out 2 tablespoons of all-purpose flour. This little addition ensures the filliness has just the right texture. Finally, I whisk them all together until the mixture is smooth and creamy. It only takes a minute, but it feels like magic watching it come together. Here's a tip. Make sure there are no lumps, because nobody wants a surprise crunch in their caramel. This filling is going to be the sweet surprise hidden inside the cake. It's like a little treasure hunt with every slice. And who doesn't love a good mystery wrap in dessert? Before we assemble the cake, let's talk about greasing the bundt pan. This step is crucial because it can determine the fate of your bundt cake. Will it be a tragic pile of crumbs or the king of the dessert table? Now, let me tell you why I'm choosing a metal bundt pan over a silicone one. Metal pans conduct heat more evenly, giving you that perfect golden crust that makes everyone's mouth water. Silicone pans might look fancy, but they can sometimes lead to uneven baking and a cake that struggles to hold its shape. For this recipe, we want a pan that means business. First, I put on a pair of disposable vinyl gloves and generously grease the entire pan with 1 tablespoon of vegetable shortening. Be sure to get into every nook and cranny, trust me. This is not the time to be stingy. If you feel like you need more vegetable shortening to get the job done, don't hesitate to add more. This is where you set the foundation for a bundt cake that slides out like a dream instead of clinging on for dear life. Then I lightly dust the pan with 1 tablespoon of unsweetened cocoa powder. It gives the pan a nice, even coating and adds a subtle touch of flavor to the cake. Flip the pan over and gently tap out the excess cocoa. Now your bundt pan is perfectly prepped and ready to work its magic. Think of it as setting the stage for the star of the show, your gingerbread cake. Big warning here. You know how we tell our kids not to believe everything they see on the internet? Well, let me confess, I didn't take my own advice. One time, while baking this bundt for a party, I decided to get creative with greasing the pan after watching a very convincing video online. Spoiler alert, it didn't end well. Let's just say I ended up with 2 bundts. One for the trash and one, hastily remade, for the party. Lesson learned. Stick to the tried and true methods. If you're curious about how it turned out, you can check out the full disaster in another video. Trust me, it's worth a laugh. It's time to bring it all together. First, pour half of the batter into the greased bundt pan. Smooth it out with a spatula so it's nice and even. Next, pour the caramel filling right in the middle. Think of it as tucking it into a cozy blanket of batter. Then, top it off with the rest of the batter and spread it out evenly with your spatula. Make sure it's all leveled out for even baking. Let me tell you about the bundt cake. It's a dessert with a history as intricate as the pan it's baked in. It all started with a traditional European cake called gooey. Picture this, a yeasted cake filled with nuts, raisins, or fruit, baked in ornate pans and served at celebrations. It wasn't just dessert, it was a symbol of festivity and warmth. Fast forward to the 1950s, and we have H. David Dahlquist and his wife Dottie to thank for the bundt pan as we know it. They took inspiration from those old European molds and created a lightweight aluminum pan under their company, Nordic Ware. But here's the kicker. They added a little T to the word Bund, which means bundle in German, to trademark the name. Clever, right? Now the bundt pan didn't really take off until 1966, when the Tunnel of Fudge cake made its debut in the Pillsbury Bake Off. It won 2nd place, but first in the hearts of home bakers everywhere. That gooey, chocolatey center was a game changer, and suddenly everyone wanted a bundt pan. Today, bundt cakes are all about versatility and flair. From simple pound cakes to elaborate creations draped in glazes and garnished with edible flowers, they've become the ultimate showstopper. Whether you're baking for a cozy family dinner or a festive holiday bash, a bundt cake is like the life of the party. Always reliable, always a crowd pleaser. make sure your oven is fully preheated before popping the bundt pan in. Place the pan on the middle rack, and yes, in the middle of the rack. No shortcuts here. Then let it bake for about 50 to 60 minutes. And here's my secret weapon, the toothpick test. Insert a toothpick into the cake, and if it comes out clean, you're golden. If not, give it a few more minutes and test again. Here's a tip. Start checking your bundt cake after about 40 minutes. Every oven bakes a little differently, and if you're at a higher altitude, it might need even more time or a slightly different approach. Trust your instincts and the smell wafting through your kitchen. Once it's baked, let the cake cool in the pan for 10 minutes. Patience is key here. Don't rush this step. Next, place a cooling rack over the pan and flip it like a pancake. Hold the cooling rack and bundt pan tightly together to keep everything secure. Fingers crossed, it slides out beautifully. I personally prefer using a round cooling rack here. It's just easier to manage and gives me more confidence when flipping the cake. Trust me, this part feels a bit like playing Russian roulette. Will it come out perfect or leave you scraping cake off the pan? The last thing you want is an uneven landing for your bundt masterpiece. Finally, let the cake cool completely for 30 minutes to 1 hour. Set a timer so you don't accidentally forget about your bundt and turn it into stale bread. Because who wants a gingerbread rock? If you have a digital thermometer, this is the perfect time to use it. Your bundt cake should cool to comfortable 68 to 72 degrees Fahrenheit before decorating. No shortcuts here, or your frosting will melt faster than a snowman in July. Now comes the fun part, decorating. First, I whip up some vanilla buttercream frosting until it's nice and fluffy. This is the base of my decoration, so I take my time getting it just right. After all, a fluffy frosting makes all the difference. Next, I transfer the frosting into a royal icing piping bag. I twist the end and tie a knot to close the bag, keeping everything neat and ready for decorating. After that, I cut a small piece from the tip of the piping bag and test the flow on a piece of parchment paper. If the flow isn't enough, I cut a little more until it's just right. And if I mess up and cut too much, well, it's time to transfer the frosting to a new bag and start fresh. Lesson learned. finishing touch, I measure out 1 tablespoon of powdered sugar and place it into a small mixing bowl. Next, I add 1/2 teaspoon of cornstarch to the powdered sugar. Using a whisk or fork, I mix them together until they are well combined. This step ensures the powdered sugar doesn't clump and creates a perfect, even dusting that looks like fresh snow on the cake. Piping snowflakes might sound intimidating, but I think of it as doodling on a cake. And hey, if my snowflakes look more like stars, it's all part of the holiday charm. Honestly, you can draw anything here with buttercream. Hearts, flowers, or even a smiley face if you're feeling playful. I once tried piping a gingerbread man, and while it ended up looking more like a blob with arms, it was still a hit at the party. Here's a personal tip. Hold the piping bag with one hand near the top to apply pressure and guide it with the other hand near the tip for control. It's like writing, but with frosting instead of ink. Also, make sure to twist the end of the bag tightly to avoid any frosting escaping from the top. Trust me, I've had more than one buttercream explosion that looked like an abstract art project. If your hand gets tired, take a quick break, or even switch hands if you're comfortable. And remember, it's buttercream. If you don't like it, just scrape it off and start again. No pressure, just fun. Plus, if anyone asks, you can always say you were going for a modern art look. My personal journey of baking bundt cakes is nothing short of a comedy of errors. I think I went through a dozen, or maybe more, bundts before I finally cracked the code. Yes, it seems crazy, but I was determined. Giving up wasn't an option, because, let's face it, there's something about a bundt cake that feels so special, like it's the crown jewel of desserts. In the beginning, every attempt was an adventure, or a disaster, depending on how you look at it. Cakes stuck to the pan, fell apart, or baked unevenly. At one point, I started calling them bundt scraps instead of cakes. My friends and family, bless their hearts, kept eating those scraps like they were gourmet treats. I owe them for never once saying, maybe you should try cookies instead. Looking back, I think those failures were a rite of passage. Each disaster taught me something new. like how greasing the pan thoroughly is non-negotiable, and how patience and a timer is a baker's best friend. Eventually I figured it out, and when I finally pulled off that first perfect bundt, it was like winning the lottery. Now every time I bake one, I can't help but laugh at how far I've come. And hey, those early fails gave me great stories to tell, so I guess they were worth it. And here's the best part. Now I get to share all the tips and tricks I've learned with you, so you don't have to go through the same wild quest I did. Consider me your bundt cake tour guide, here to make the journey a whole lot smoother and much more fun. Let me tell you a little story about gingerbread flavors. They're as rich and complex as this cake we're making. Did you know that gingerbread started way back in Europe? Originally, it wasn't even a dessert. It was made with breadcrumbs, honey, and spices, more for preserving flavors than satisfying a sweet tooth. Over time, molasses came into play, giving gingerbread that deep, rich flavor and chewy texture we love today. And the spices? Oh, they were the ultimate luxury back in the day. Ginger, cinnamon, cloves, nutmeg, and allspice were symbols of wealth and status. Can you imagine? Bakers went wild with creativity, turning gingerbread into cakes, cookies, and even edible sculptures that were almost too pretty to eat. Now, gingerbread flavors are all about warmth and nostalgia. They bring back memories of cozy holiday kitchens and gatherings. Every bite is a balance of bold spices, mellow sweetness, and just a hint of tang. Whether it's in cookies, a gingerbread house, or this bundt cake, these flavors carry a little piece of holiday magic and tradition with them. Isn't that amazing? I use a small sifter to gently shake the powdered sugar mixture over the top of the cake for that perfect snowy effect. This step makes the cake look so festive and elegant, like it's just been dusted with fresh snow. It's simple, fun, and adds a magical holiday vibe that's hard to resist. Here's the part where you can also check if your cake is fully cooled. If the cake isn't completely cooled, your dusting will melt like snow on a sunny day, turning into a sticky mess instead of that pristine, snowy effect. Trust me, it's worth the wait to get it just right. Patience pays off in the prettiest way. Of course, you can skip this step if you're short on time or prefer a more rustic look. But honestly, isn't a little powdered snow, the cherry on top of your holiday masterpiece? Either way, the cake will still taste amazing and impress your guests. Since I'm taking this cake to a party, I want to package it up beautifully. Therefore, I wouldn't be cutting this bundt on camera. I grab a paper box with a clear window. It's perfect for showing off my masterpiece while keeping it safe during transport. I absolutely love these boxes. They come flat, which makes them super easy to store, and all I have to do is unfold them and they're ready to go. No extra projects required. It's like a little holiday miracle for busy bakers. Honestly, it feels like they were made for moments like this, saving the day one bundt at a time. I'll leave a link below for this box, in case you want to grab one for yourself. I gently lift the cake using a cake lifter and place it into the box with care. To finish, I optionally add a festive touch with a little ribbon or a holiday tag. When I walk into the party with this beauty, I know it'll be the star of the dessert table. And there you have it, a gingerbread Bundt cake with caramel filling that's guaranteed to impress your family and friends. Slice it up, serve it with coffee or tea, and watch the compliments roll in. This cake isn't just dessert. It's a centerpiece, a conversation starter, and a little piece of holiday magic. Thanks for hanging out with me today. If you try this recipe, let me know how it turns out. And don't forget to share it with someone who loves gingerbread as much as we do. Happy baking and happy holidays. If you want to discover a new holiday treat, check out my gingerbread man sandwich. Yes, sandwich, with eggnog frosting in the middle. It's a fun twist on a classic, and the creamy spiced filling is just divine. You can pair it with a cup of hot cocoa or your favorite holiday beverage for the ultimate festive treat. Yum! See you in my next video, where we'll explore even more ways to make your holidays sweet and unforgettable.